All right.
Okay, welcome to the February 11th, 2025 session of Tapper and HamSCI technical session. My name's Dave, KB0S, and just Nathaniel said we ought to kind of identify ourselves and our hobby interests. So I'm going to do that. Um, I this year became the president of Tapper, and I've been a Tapper member since the mid 2000s. Um, and I participated on the Open HBSDR project, doing something very similar to what I do here. And I first was licensed as a ham in 1975 in a ham club at the University of Missouri. Um, then life and school got in the way of ham radio, so I didn't do much with it until I came back to it in the 2000s. So um, that's it for me. Next on the list, we have Nathaniel, W2 and AF. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dave. I appreciate it. I am Nathaniel W2NF. Founded and I lead HamSci, and I'm an associate professor at the University of Scranton. And I am, trying to make this a successful project, and I greatly appreciate everyone's support. And one of the reasons I asked people to um, give an update or to introduce themselves tonight is we have one of my students joining the call tonight. His name is Owen Ruzansky, KD3ALD, and he'll be able to introduce himself in a minute. But he's going to be the student, or he is the student working on a new project that's sponsored by the Frankfurt Radio Club, and there's a link to a news article in the chat. Oh, Rob, you're here. Can you hear us, Rob?
He's muted.
Rob, can you hear us? Okay.
I'm here.
Great. So yes, I was just saying that um I'm introducing a new student tonight, Owen Rozansky, KD3ALD. And so one of the things that we're asking everyone to do tonight is introduce who they are and what they're doing. And so Owen's going to especially want to talk to you tonight, Rob, because we are just starting a new project that's funded by the Frankfurt Radio Club. And I just put a link in the chat to a news article about it. And this project is going to pay Owen's summer salary to develop some sort of a DX contesting dashboard visual display for the personal space weather station. So what we'd like to do is um, I was thinking of starting off with doing like a whisper visualization on the RX 888 computer to show local stuff, but I think we can talk about this more in the general discussion. And we definitely wanted to pick your brains about it, Rob, and Phil and everyone else on here. So
Okay. Okay.
back back to you, Dave.
Okay. Well, next on the list is Rob. Can you give a short introduction of who you are and when you got into ham
Oh,
radio?
you wanted me to,
Yes.
I'm always expect to be last on the list here.
Well, you're next on my list, so I'm going to let you introduce yourself. This is
Okay.
not general discussion. This is introduction.
Yeah. Well, I'm Robinette. I'm AI6VN. Um, I'm a retired, well, almost retired, high-tech executive from Silicon Valley. Founded a couple of startups, but in fact, I still have two of them running. But I really returned to ham radio in like 8 years ago, maybe, after I retired. And my most greatest interest is learning about radio propagation. And Nathaniel reached out to me before I think the 2017, was that the eclipse when you reached out through the KPH? I'm the volunteer who operates two the best radio shortwave reception sites here on the West Coast. I'm in Northern California, near San Francisco. So uh, that led me into seeing how I could support the GREAT project. So that's my I've developed a package of software and collaborate deeply with Phil Karn, who is, I expect, with us, and I hope, and we're
Yep.
working on the software for that is been purposed as the kind of the core of, I think, of the Daisy 2 shortwave part of the Daisy 2 project.
Hmm.
So is that enough of us? Is anything else I need to?
I think that's great.
Anyway,
That's it.
whisperdemon.org. That's where you can find me. But
Oh, okay. Next on the list, we have Jim, K4BSE.
Well, good evening, all. Not much happening here. I've been laid up with a little medical issue and trying to get my taxes done. So that's kind of put a cramp in ham radio. Back to net,
Say,
K4BSC.
Jim, how long have you been a ham?
What?
How long have you been a ham?
Oh, how long? Sorry. I've been a ham since 1957.
Very good.
And in fact, I've had the same call all that time. And I have a wall clock that one of my daughters gave me. I use when I want to use a cute phonetic to help somebody remember my call, I use Big Sleepy Elephant. And she gave me a wall clock that says Big Sleepy Elephant since 1957.
Very good. Okay. Next on the list, we have Scott Newell, N5TNL. Go ahead, Scott.
I don't really know how to introduce myself. I've been licensed for a while, but never really operated. And I kind of got pulled into this crowd with last year's total eclipse, and then, waited until I found something I thought I could help with, and here I am. So that's it for me.
Well, you're a humble fellow, Scott. We know that you do a lot more than you said. Okay. Next on the list is Bob, WB0VGD. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Bob.
I always say very good day and good evening to you, Owen. Just to introduce myself. I retired from the Boulder Commerce Labs 2 years ago. I spent 17 years at NIST working on electromagnetic measurements of all kinds, antenna calibrations, measuring aircraft penetration. We actually measured the Space Shuttle Endeavour down at Kennedy Space Center. And then I segued into a career at ITS, Institute for Telecommunication Sciences, where we did a lot of mobile channel measurements for spectrum decision making. I did a lot of work in that area, and also worked in building work, public safety communications, looking at wireless building propagation. So I've spent most of my career in propagation, ranging from short range ultra wideband measurements to long distance mobile channel measurements. The one thing I missed in my career because of the cellular revolution, wireless revolution, was the ionosphere. And so I've late in my life here, or after my career, I'm very interested in the ionosphere. I'd like to get more involved in it. And I'm developing some ideas. I'd like to make some contributions maybe to the Citizens Radio Project. I have some ideas on waveform designs and things that I'm thinking about. So that's about it. But really, I've watched some of the videos from HamSCI, and you folks look like a very capable group, and I'd like to participate. So that's where I'm at right now.
Very good. Let's see. Next on the list is Bob Strickland, N5BRG. Go ahead, Bob.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bob in 5BRG in North Texas, and I've been a ham since I was in high school back in the 60s, late 60s, and been involved in AMSAT and TAPR and a few other organizations, and enjoyed every minute of it. So that's it. Back to you, Dave.
Very good. And next on the list is Bruce, WB4MJG. Go ahead. That call?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm
there you go.
trying to get it unmuted.
Okay.
I'm a mostly retired systems administrator for the University of Tennessee, engineer by background. Been a ham since 1969. When novices had to know the Morse code and all of that. Interested in playing with a lot of embedded processor things, the new generation stuff. Did some embedded processor work back in, 10, 15 years ago, and still using a lot of the old stuff. And now all of the new toys out is pretty amazing. Always been interested in HF propagation, don't know a lot about it. So mainly here to learn. Back
Well,
to you, Dave.
very good. Okay, let's see. Oh, next on the list is Dave New, WB8 SBE. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, hi. This is Dave, and it's a November 8, Sierra Bravo Echo.
I keep doing that. I'm sorry.
That's all right. SBE, otherwise known as small beady eyes, or subacute bacterial endocarditis, if you will. But I've been a ham since 1970, since I was in high school. And so this is my 55th year of being licensed. So we're pumping away. My professional career, I spent probably about 30 years, close to 30 years, doing embedded systems development. And a lot of it was hard real-time stuff, including machine vision and backbone routers for the internet, and just all kinds of interesting stuff that I did until I got mixed up in the auto industry around about 2001 or so. And then I ended up essentially working for Chrysler, and I just retired there at the end of 2023 as a senior RF and cybersecurity specialist in the vehicle access group. So I was able to find something that I could leverage my ham radio knowledge, my radio knowledge with. We were doing key fobs and key fob receivers, and I wrote the AES protocol for our fobs. So there we go. That's pretty much it. I'm interested in just about anything. I've been involved in all kinds of different ham radio and ham radio related stuff over the years. So
Very good. Let's see. Bob John, did I call on you yet?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, I'm trying. I've gotten lost in the list a little bit. How do you spell that? Pronounce that last name again. You
Yeah,
have
me
John.
here, Jonk, yeah, Johnk. Just spell John or just pronounce John and add a K, and you
Okay.
got it.
Okay, and so next on the list we have Clint, KA7OEI. Go ahead, Clint.
Hi, I'm Clint K7OEI. I've been licensed since '82, semi-retired, and worked for decades in the satellite telecom industry, where I did everything you can imagine in that realm. Worked on most bands from VLF, like 2200 through the bands you can see. If you Google my call sign, you'll see something about the optical stuff. Currently one of the guys in charge of the Northern Utah Web SDR, where we try to make things work as close to ideal as we can, based on the environment electrical environment we're in. And been working for years with Rob and Vokes, and also help Rob co-manage KFS. Some of the stuff there, the public facing stuff, which hopefully everybody's already familiar with, the web SDRs and whatnot, and helped with some of that. So back to you.
Very good. And I must mention you have a long-standing website talking about K9Q radio.
Well, it goes back a year and a half, 2 years, but it's being supplanted because Phil and others are actually getting around to documenting it properly. Plus, it's a moving target. So anyway.
Okay. And next on the list is Dave, KD0 EAG. Go ahead, Dave.
Hi, I was first licensed as a ham in, I think it was 1967, might have been 66. I had a little trouble with that. But it was back in the days of 5 words a minute, Morse code, and 1 year license. And I didn't have any friends who were the least bit interested in it. They all thought I was very peculiar. So I kind of fell out of that aspect of the hobby. But my interest in radio and electronics and everything, communications, everything has actually stood me very well over the years, in small ways. I lived many different lives over the years, and it just, especially a confidence, having some sense of what was going on when all around me didn't have a clue, was often useful, even in very disparate fields. So this is, and now I'm most interested in kind of the magnetosphere, the magneto-ionospheric interactions, and measuring things in that realm. So that's me.
Yes, I'm going to make another comment about Dave here. He and I live about 2 miles apart, and I first met him at Dayton in a talk by Phil Harmon of the HPSDR. That's where he's known. And we were both at the same talk, and then we found out that we were from the same town. So you never know. Next on the list. Yes. Next on the list is Dave, W6OQ. Go ahead, Dave. What's your background?
Yeah. So licensed in high school in the early 60s, and let's see, spent my career in electronic design, mostly consumer electronics. And what is it here now? Like 6 or 7 years, retired from DirecTV, where I did set-top box design and some of the satellite dishes. Yeah, that's it. Oh, highly technical, not so much on the sciencey side of the atmosphere, but I'm learning a lot by, hanging out on the science call and listening to the stuff about propagation.
Very good. Next on the list is Dave Julian, WB9YIG. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, good evening, folks. Dave Julian, WB9YIG. First licensed in 76 down in Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi. I'm a retired fiber optic engineer, having a good time with it all, and I've done a lot of satellite contacts, and now I'm working on an EME station. I got all the equipment, just got to figure out how to make it work. And I did want to mention that my better half and I have been causing trouble for 51 years this week. So,
whoa, very good.
So that's all I got.
Next on the list is David McGaw, N1 HAC. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Been interested in building radios since I was probably 6, and I remember the boys' first and second book of radio electronics, and then the third, and apparently there was a fourth. But then went to Radio Amateur's Handbook and all that stuff, but didn't get licensed until 1989. Finally sat down, learned the code, and ended up being probably one of the last of the real extras. Somehow I passed 20 word per minute code, but would have been an ham licensed long before that if it hadn't been the code, and I'm grateful. I think it's good that we've gotten rid of that. Had a long history, though, otherwise in electronics. and physics. I'm a physicist who knows how to design electronics. I had a long career designing high-end music synthesizers, one called the Synclavier, and then some other gigs in professional audio, and then became a rocket scientist, so to speak. Work at Dartmouth College, still do. We build instruments and put them on sounding rockets, shoot them up into the northern lights. Also, I've done high altitude balloons in Antarctica and various ground receivers to pick up emissions and also ionospheric research. But, my hobby is my vocation, and I don't see anything wrong with that. So grateful to be here.
Okay. Next on the list is a new person, I think. Elmer Muser. Is that one word or two?
Unmuting, sorry.
Okay.
It's Elmer Musser, M-U-S-S-E-R.
Okay.
Musser.
Oh, okay. It's two. Okay.
Yep.
I was
And
guessing that was your name. It was the two words, but I missed the early conversation. Go ahead.
okay, so N3AGE, licensed, 77. I was in the Air Force, I guess. 75. Yeah, 76, 77, somewhere in there. I got licensed in the Air Force. I'm self-taught, so I'd be I guess the less knowledgeable person here. I was senior vice president for HBO, so I did everything from film acquisition, editing, audio. I actually started off in satellite in Long Island, building one of the first C and KU band facilities of the magnitude that we did. And anyway, long story made short, I bumped into Rob because we did projects together in the industry and got me hooked on Whisper. And that's the end of that story.
Very good. And sounds like you've got a wonderful background. So glad you're here and hope you come back. Next on the list is Jay Schwartz. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Well, let's see now where to begin. With all the guys that say they've been licensed back in the 60s and stuff like that, I feel kind of like sort of the baby in the group because this is only my 51st year of being licensed, as I was originally licensed as Whiskey November 8, Sierra Bravo, India in 1974. So that's okay. I'll get over it. Career-wise, I am a retired embedded software engineer from the automotive industry. Is where I spent all of my career doing the stuff that goes on the car. It's real-time embedded software. So that's what I did. As far as here in HamSCI, I'm an operator. I just enjoy getting on the air, making cues. I've participated in the last solar eclipse QSO party. I was on the center line down in Akron, Ohio. Had a great time there. So, and I've been going to the HamSCI conferences for the last several years, uh, just to enjoy the technology, learning, meeting all kinds of really interesting people, and just enjoying myself and the company of my fraternal brothers and sisters in amateur radio. So, and that's why I'm here, to learn. So, with that, back to net control.
Very good. And next on the list is Jonathan, KC3EEY. So Jonathan, some background. See there? He's got his mic muted. We'll wait for a minute. Jonathan, are you there? He doesn't seem to be there. We'll come back to him. Next on the list is Michael Howen, AC0G. Go ahead, Michael.
Good evening, everybody. I'm very much an amateur at all of this. I'm not trained in electronics or embedded anything. My professional background is in medicine, and I work in an emergency department. But I've been a ham since the early 80s. I've been interested in radio since I was a little kid. My first license was from Botswana. When I was in the Peace Corps there for a couple of years, I got my ham license with the fond idea that maybe I'd be able to communicate back to the States, but didn't work out. But I still had a lot of fun anyway, and I taught some kids there some amateur radio while I was at it. So involved in this project. I don't know how I got involved in this. I think in part was because of my acquaintance with Dave Larson and Dave Witten, because we all live in close proximity to each other, and so what we've been having most, what I've been doing most recently is helping to work on some antenna development for the DAISY grant that's coming up. So that's me. Back to Nat.
Okay. And next on the list is Owen. Now, Owen, you get to tell your story.
Hi, nice to meet everybody. I'm Owen Rosansky, KD3ALD. Sorry, repeater in the background. I'm a student at the University of Scranton. I'm a freshman computer engineering major. I have been licensed for a month and 1 day, so I'm very impressed by all of your careers. It's very interesting to me, and the time you've all been licensed. It's very interesting to me. So thanks for allowing me to be here tonight.
Well, congratulations.
Well, welcome. Next on the list is Phil Karn, K9Q. Go ahead, Phil.
Hello, everybody. I would have been outside just watching the launch that just happened, but it was overcast. And now I'm seeing all these wonderful pictures from everybody else who clear skies. Oh, well, the Twilight launches are the best. Anyway, Phil, K9Q, been licensed since 1971, so that's been a while. And I live in San Diego. I'm retired from Qualcomm. I've been retired since 2011, so it's been a while. And my major project right now, the reason I'm here, is something called K9Q Radio, which is a package that will handle large numbers of, or provide large numbers of independent channels of a common SDR front end, which has become an integral part of Whisper Demon, Rob's Whisper Demon project. It's also finding use in several other ham radio applications where they have need for something similar. Anyway, that's that. Back to you.
Okay. Now, as far as I can tell, we haven't heard from Jonathan. I don't know if he's there now, but I think, oh, Tom, N5EG. Go ahead, Tom.
Oh, good evening, Dave, and everyone in the group. Let's see, I've been licensed since 1969 and spent 25 years at Collins Radio Company, designing fiber optic transmission systems. Started with multi-mode, and of course, all the for the first system, all the rest were single mode systems. And then in 1999, left, and a few of us started a startup company building a terabit IP MPLS router, and I retired about 7 years ago. Back to the group.
Very good. And Tom's a very modest guy. He's involved in lots of projects. So interesting character and a longtime TAPR member. So that's it. I think. Have I skipped anybody? Bruce, did I get you?
You did.
Yep.
I'm here.
Oh, Jonathan, you need to tell us about when you became a ham and how you got involved in this.
Okay. My name is Jonathan, KC3EEY. I first became a ham in 2015. From the inspiration of my late Elmer, Carl Eddy, AA3, WR. And he encouraged me to get my amateur radio license when I was still in college at the time, going for my electrical engineering degree. I graduated with my electrical engineering degree in 2020. Along the way, I met Nathaniel in 2019. Nathaniel started in the fall of 2019, and in 2013, I became interested in very low frequency phenomena, including natural radio emissions, whistlers, and dawn chorus. I found that extremely fascinating, and it has been a passion since then. And I've always had a passion for electronics. I was taking my toys apart since I was 4 years old, and I was able to get my hand on a screwdriver, and knew at around 5 a little bit of what an electrical engineer did, and knew that that's what I wanted to be. It became my childhood dream, and I'm glad that I was able and given the opportunity to achieve that. And currently now, what I do is I built a VLF reception system. It's similar to the RX 888, except it includes a VLF active antenna, which is basically a VLF E field or probe antenna with preamp and a data acquisition system. Continuously listening to the VLF spectrum up to 48 kilohertz. It'll automatically detect whistlers and dawn chorus. It captures science grade data using common off-the-shelf parts, high quality sound card, and GPS receiver. And what I hope to do is build a bunch of these VLF reception systems and send them out all over the world, and so they could augment the network of personal space weather stations and provide real-time VLF data, and also hopefully start HamSCI's first lightning location network. That's also what I'm working towards. That's all I have. Back to the net.
Okay, well, have I missed anybody? I think I called on everybody, but so at this point, we're open for general discussions unless Nathaniel has something else he wants to talk about.
No, I think general discussions are good, but if we could steer our general discussions to talking about ideas for doing this DX and contesting display, I think that's what I would really like to talk about tonight.
Well, why don't you start that off and describe what the project is?
Okay, so the project is basically to create some sort of a local GUI or graphical display for that runs on the same computer as connected to the RX 888, so it'd be running on the same Whisper Daemon computer. And I think we'd probably we'd want some display that would take advantage of the data to help either primarily contesters and also DXers and other, operators in general. And exactly what that is can be we still have some time to discuss what exactly this will be. In fact, that's going to be the topic of Owen's HamSCI workshop poster is going to be it's going to be a discussion of what this could be. But I think the way I've kind of envisioned it so far is we'd start off by uh, basic basically plotting in real time, maps of all the whisper spots that you get. And we might be able to use that information to help a local operator answer questions like which way should I turn my beam now, or what band should I switch to, or when should I switch to a different band? Those are the sorts of questions we'd like to answer. Um, we're also working with the Frankfurt Radio Club on this, so some of their members are providing advice as to what they would like to see into this, but we're still very much open for ideas and discussion. I thought so. Owen's tasks so far, he's been working on the project for about a month, or maybe yeah, about a month so far. And the first task we gave him was to operate the RIDI contest this past weekend, and he was the one that configured N1MM and MMTTY on our computer, and the rig that's right behind him in the shack there. And we got the W3USR club to get on, and we operated 400 QSOs and made 250,000 points this weekend, over 3 days of operation. And so that gave him a flavor of what contesting actually is, and we're going to continue doing more of that sorts of operation. But what I thought might be interesting as just like a kind of to help Owen get to know how the Whisper Demon RX888 system is set up, I thought it might be good for him to just start by doing a display of the whisper spots that are on the system. Maybe even like if we were able to get the source code that runs whisper.rocks, would we be able to adapt that and have it run on the on an RX888 Linux machine and display the local spots locally? Is that a feasible thing? So I think that's what
Question for Rob.
yeah. You're muted, Rob.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not really a question for me. I don't do user interfaces like Phil.
Right.
I'm a command line guy,
Right.
and so the uh, really the person who's done the web work, there is a web server right now built into Whisper Daemon that is used by the K9Q radio. So are you familiar with, so there is a web page on the Whisper Daemon servers now, the ones that have an RX888. So, and Scott is our guru on that, the use of that. The K9Q web was developed by G0ORX, I think, but he really just got a prototype together but did put together the skeleton of how you can display the data being captured uh, by the underlying software, the Phil software and the Whisper Daemon, but mostly is Phil software, displaying what Phil is generating. So we have an interface. I've abbreviated it to be called the QWeb, and I can give you an example. So this is, I believe that if one were going to develop another um, user interface, that Scott's code would be a good model of how to develop it. It uses the Onion browser, and I'm just about at the far reaches of my understanding. Okay, here. But I think that the Onion is kind of like Apache or something else. It's a web server. It's a very lightweight web server. And K9Q streams are then displayed by that web server under the control of Scott's K9Q web software. So there is a subdirectory in the on each Whisper Daemon server that contains one software subdirectory for Phil software and another subdirectory that contains Scott's software. So the user interface that is native to the let's see if I can show you guys. This is an example of Scott's software. Um, this is the K9 the 9Q web page for an Orange Pi running near me here at KFS. And so this is Scott's software getting its feed from from the K9Q web. This is all running on a device this size. This is an Orange Pi 5, a $100 single computer. Um, and you can see that, this is very high performance. I think Scott is updating the screen 10 times a second. And we're looking at the 0 to 30 megahertz spectrum from out at the antenna farm here near me at KFS out on the coast and here in California. So that's where I would recommend. I think that if you're gonna start to develop a user interface, that starting by understanding what Scott has done would be a benefit both to us, because we'd have another developer familiar with the graphical display environment, and as well, I think it'd accelerate the development process, not having to go and reinvent all the infrastructure. The infrastructure is in place. So, just as an aside, this is all of the K9Q here is running on one core of an 8-core ARM processor. It's this afternoon, Phil and I got this working. So this is 1/8 of the embedded CPU on this little core. Is now the web display is running on a different core, but it takes almost no CPU cycles. So there's lots of processing power. There's and a lot of infrastructure in place, I think, that could accelerate the development of whatever you want to do. I'm not sure I know what you want to do, but if this now in terms of comparison to an analytic site like that of Whisper.rocks, as you mentioned, um, this is Whisper.rocks is. I'll just pick up the something here. It's KPH. Okay, so this is a graphical display that's created by a web page from data that's stored in the uploaded by the site. So one could do this locally, but this is actually there's pretty heavy lifting here involved CPU wise. This data is uploaded to a 20-core Xeon computer, and then the queries are executed on that computer. So this is not something that could or even should be, I think, embedded inside a device like the a Whisper Daemon service or at an individual ham site. So I think the biggest problem I would see is figuring out what it is that you want to do. What is it that this would do that would complement the resources already available and the user interface is already available. So I
Owen,
think
Owen, what do you
yeah.
think? Feel free to ask questions.
I don't know what to really ask. I mean, I have a 20-core Xeon server in my dorm, but I know you said it doesn't really integrate with the RX 888 like standalone sort of thing. So I don't know. I don't know what to ask, but I'll
I don't blame you, Owen. I'm not sure. If I were you coming into this, I think what in the world, I think we need to help him by giving him an idea of what it is that he could do that would be useful. And your friends at the Cat Frankfurt Radio Club, they should. I would start with what is it that we'd like to do that we can't do now.
Well, I know that you said that um well, I think there's a few things. I think one thing is it's good to have Owen do a few exercises to help him just understand what the system is and what its capabilities are and how it's architected.
Yeah, yeah.
So one part of this is just getting him to kind of know what's been done already and what's out there. And I think, we have already purchased for him. I don't think he has his hands on it yet, but it is sitting at with Majid at the university. We have already purchased for him an RX 888 and a B-Link and basically everything you need to put
Okay.
together a system
Okay.
that he can play with.
Okay.
And so I think another good thing is for him so he's going to be tasked with learning how to install the operating system from the ground up and learning how to put everything together. And so he just kind of knows things at that level. Then I think having him be aware of this, the web SDR, like you just showed us, and know where that is going to be another level. I still think, I still think there's some use in having some sort of a local mapping display. I know you said that maybe the Whisper.rocks is too much of a heavy lift for the server, but I mean, I think the fact that this system is going to sit on someone's property where they're also operating a contest or operating DXing, and it's going to basically act as a local skimmer. So it can tell people some information about signals that are coming into their local place. I think having a local mapping function that can take advantage of the spots that it's receiving is a really useful tool.
Well,
And
then yeah, I can see that, and I think that if you're going to do that, the person who knows the most about this is Phil Barnard, VK7JJ,
yeah.
who's the developer and operator of the site we were looking at,
Yeah.
and the greatest difficulty with Phil
Uh-huh.
is that he lives in Tasmania, so
Right.
he's almost at 12 hours out of sync with us. So
Yeah.
there's very narrow windows of time when you can get together in a conference call with Phil. He's a great guy, and um, and I'm sure he'd be happy to share what he's done. But and I'll be happy to put you in, to facilitate interactions there. But but I think that's there's Phil uses all the, as soon as I talk to Phil, he starts talking in an argot that is almost like I'm hearing Greek, although I actually studied Greek, so I probably understand Greek a little better than some of the stuff that Phil talks about. Um, so the so anyway, I think that whatever it is, yes, we'd be happy to start. I think Michael or I could mentor Owen through the installation process and configuration, and give him introduction to the it is something something of a labyrinth the way it works. I think Phil and I and others have and Scott all tried to separate our pieces out and make them as independent of each other as possible. But there's inevitably kind of effects between interactions between the different components of the system. So it'd be great to have.
Yeah.
I will say that
Can I ask
at
a
one point I
question?
wrote a really little program that just queried the database, the same database Phil uses, and just displayed the whisper spots specific to my station on a great circle map.
Mm-hmm.
It's something
Oh,
that can be done locally and quickly. In this case, it was hitting the database, but you could easily just grab the stuff that's coming in real time and pop it on a map. So there are ways to do that that are probably really lightweight and just use your local data. So yeah,
May
I
I,
think it's probably a very accessible and doable project.
So
And that's
I'm gonna
kind
may
of where
I
I was
ask
thinking of
something?
starting.
May I ask something?
Yeah, sure, Dave.
Okay. I'm not absolutely sure I'm clear on what you're picturing, but would it not be possible to at least begin by integrating some of the pieces that are already available into a kind of a web-based app that would allow you to see, say, your spectrum, the existing Scott's work on the behavior of the RX-888, but also what's going on out in the world just by passing through the interface to the whatever it is, Whisper Rocks or whatever it is, and perhaps some other things that involve local information of interest that you all would define, but integrate them, kind of in a web app framework that would could be launched from, say, the RX-888 or whatever the controlling system, just as the 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 web S the web KA9Q SDR doesn't exactly run. There's not a server that runs there. It has a server that is written with the Onion libraries, but you can launch many of those for many different purposes, and you can as I recall, there are quite a number of interfaces in that Onion library. It's very interesting. Um, uh, but you can kind of merge all this into one user experience that probably could be well more than the sum of the parts. Um, and you could do it bit by bit. So it wouldn't be, you'd have some local storage perhaps of an accumulation of interesting data of interest to you. You'd have some easy access to some of these other things without fumbling around for other web pages. And you'd have, and you could pass queries relevant to what you were trying to do at the present moment. All of that sort of thing is relatively doable and it seems to me, and it can be done in any framework that you want. You can do it in just as web pages. You could write an Electron app. You can write a Qt app. You can do anything. They all do this easily. And so you pick your poison as far as development environment. But running something that can launch from your running system has a lot of advantages in that it knows a lot already about what you're doing, and you don't lose it in the detritus, on your desktop or whatever, as I so often do. I don't know. That's just my question. Something about more statement than question.
So
I have a couple of thoughts on this.
Go ahead.
Well, it's already logging Whisper spots, probably FT4 and FT8, and I believe Rob installs a database as part of the Whisper daemon install. So it probably would be an easy first step to go ahead and start taking those spots, either parsing the log file or grabbing them sooner, jamming them into tables. Then you've got a local database with your locally received spots. I'm not sure that the K9Q web is the best basis because it's really geared toward real time. And I'm thinking in the end, we're probably going to end up with Nginx as a true web server running under Whisper daemon, just to kind of be a front end reverse proxy for K9Q web. In that case, you've got Nginx and you've got the ability to go to, as Dave mentioned, any of the frameworks. If you wanted to write Python and use Flask or whatever, you'd be there, and you've already got a database running. So, yeah, I think then you're looking at trying to find a way to map the stuff.
Yeah.
And the mapping, and I kind of that's what I was thinking. Actually, I kind of figured there probably was a database already there, or it wouldn't be hard to build one on a local machine. And then if you just took the Whisper.rocks mapping code, which is already set up to map Whisper spots, just have it query the local database instead of the remote one.
Yeah,
Then
it's kind of where I'm thinking too.
you know.
Yeah, if you're gonna end up with Nginx, then you know that there's nothing you can't do. What probably the interesting and challenging part would be defining, new interesting things to do.
Yes. But I totally agree with that. I just think the first step for Owen is to do something to just kind of understand how the system works and be able to show some data. But I think, I mean, I've already met with the FRC guys like Ray Sokola, K9RS, and we've been meeting with Bud Trench, AA3B. They already have a list of questions they want Owen to answer with what this is displaying. So I mean, there are people out there who have very kind of clear ideas of what they would like this to do. So I think once we start having some mechanism to put some data on the screen, like if we're able to show them, hey, look, we're able to show all these whisper spots in real time. Hey, look, we are able to get a 30 megahertz waterfall display tracking in real time. And yes, we can do things like I don't know, do statistics on it or get certain measurements off of that. I think that they're very quickly going to say, okay, why don't you try to answer this particular question to help us operate? Those users, I can tell you the FRC people, I think they know some of the things that they would love to see to help them operate, but they don't understand what the capabilities are of the RX-888 or the personal space weather station. And I think this group
Okay.
might be the other way around. I think this group very much understands what the RX-888 can do and what the display is, but I'm not sure that this group quite has the same in quite the same level of knowing what contest operators want to see. I think we have some idea. But I don't think it's
Yeah.
So I was going to ask the dumb question, and that is, if any of this stuff that you're thinking about would require any kind of an internet connection, then why not just use Whisper Rocks and do a search on the location that your Whisper receiver is on, and you get exactly what you're looking for?
That's a really good question. There's a couple of reasons. First of all, I envision two separate modes for this. I do it. I think there should be some mode of this thing where you can have it disconnected from the internet. You go down, you're on some expedition down to, some Antarctic island, and your Starlink broke down and you don't have an internet connection. Can this thing still be useful? So
Well, then the question is, will the RX-888 be able to survive in an environment in a multi station environment where you have a bunch of about 4 or 5 other stations surrounding it within about 1,000-foot circle, all running a kilowatt or more?
these are really good questions, and part of the project, Tim Duffy K3LR wants us to install one at his house. So at his station. So I'd like to put one over at his place this summer. And
Yeah.
and then we can answer that question. And when we find out how good or badly it performs, we can work to make adjustments. So these are all really good questions. But we do
Yeah.
but but Tim does want to have this thing put at his station, and the FRC members who also have very significant stations also want to test out this hardware as well. So I think we'll get all those questions answered. But I do think that there's a real value in being able to have some sort of device that does have a certain amount of standalone capability. And at least from my perspective as an operator, I find it very satisfying to think, okay, I have this device thing here that's telling me what I see here and doesn't have to go out to the internet constantly in order to query something else. I mean, it certainly can have that as an add-on, but I think it'd be nice to have some amount, just the same way, like if you buy a new, when you like Rob wanted to be able to see the full 30 megahertz spectrum. He's like, I just want to see what's here. You know, I want to see what spots I'm getting right here. I don't want to have to go to someone else's web server. I just want to plug this thing in, plug in a monitor or whatever, and know what I'm getting.
So can I make a couple of comments? I'm
Yeah.
involved in the Northern California DX Association group, not
Mhm.
because I'm a big time DXer, but I wanted to work more DX, and so I joined that group and started watching and attending some of their Zoom meetings. But they're all very serious DX people. And a fella made a presentation there that wrote this program called DX Lab that I
Yeah.
posted a note on here. But there are several different logging programs that are out there, and everybody's got their favorite one. But this guy was involved with that group originally, but now he's up in the Massachusetts area, I believe. So he's a little bit closer to you guys now. But he was sort of passionate about the software, and it's in a modular format, and it posts maps of the world showing where everybody's located. It does all kinds of neat things that existed prior to things like Whisper for seeking out what DX stations were on the air that you could operate. And it tracks all the different countries or all the different possible awards that you can get for you as it goes along. And I think you're mostly interested in just receiving stations, but maybe you want to work it both ways. If you do, then that would be even better. But you could do it just as a reception thing, and it's hooked into some of the other major databases too that are like DX Worldwide and QRZ and some of those databases to help you track the different stations and do QSL cards if you want to. But he's pretty passionate about it, and he may even be willing to help in some way. He's got an interface for FT8 already, and so maybe some of the stuff that Rob has could be coordinated with it, and it may be pretty easy to all of a sudden have a display working with an existing DX database. And if this one wasn't the right one, it may be one of the others would work well. So those are some of my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Bob.
We have, I installed the Postgres database, but it's really there just to be a client so you can do queries to I don't do anything to record spots locally in a database. But that would be a wonderful project if you want to do that. And similarly, the Onion web service, it was there because I think because John G0ORX put it in there, his software runs on it. I have known all of these things um, are open to being reevaluated and re-implemented or additions to be added on. We have plenty of resources, CPU and disk resources to add more such features. So we Philip Gladstone, for example, contributed. I worked with him. So Whisper Daemon, I think you guys know. If you don't, it listens with the 888, listens to all the FT4 and FT8 bands, decodes them and uploads them to PSK Reporter. So if you have a Whisper, a 888 Whisper Daemon system, you're not just uploading Whisper spots. You're uploading every FT4 and FT8 that your site can hear on every band. You're, of course, recording to the GRAPE database. And there's plenty of resources left to tune to other things. Recently, Phil has added HDLFL. Is it height? This now that one
HFDL.
HFDL, high frequency data link.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I think Owen probably knows what HFDL is, the aircraft location over HF, and that's on different frequencies from the ham radio, and having access to that data set, there is no system I know of out there that integrates whisper spots, FT8, FT4, and HFDL spots all into a single display.
You could, and the HFDL stuff is quite unique. You got aircraft flying out in places that they're never going to be whisper transmitters, or ham radios are almost never operating. I'm in the middle of the Indian Ocean. You know, you'll have airplanes flying there. So, so that would, I think especially that HFDL seems like a rich thing that should be displayed. And I don't know, Phil, you know much more about what what visualizations are there of the HFDL data that you're recording now?
I'm currently feeding the data I'm getting to an aggregator called airframes.io. It's similar to the way the ADSB aggregators work, except they work in all the modes other than ADSB. And really, I mean, you know, what do you want to know? To me, it's not the tracking of the airplanes that's the interesting part to me as so much as all the HF propagation overhead information. The planes all report what channels they were in ground stations on, and how many messages were lost. And you know, there's all sorts of stuff you can learn about the channels or infer about the channels by just monitoring all these overhead messages. So, you know, what do you want to do with it?
I had one more thing I meant to mention too, is that the DX community could find this whole thing if it worked and people put it in place and left it there as a tool to help them understand where their signal could propagate to, and might get very interested in it could be sort of a boon to ham radio to a certain extent to get more people interested in just working DX overall.
Well, that's certainly a major goal of this, is to try to get, more people interested in working DX or to help operators.
And so you mentioned the DX expeditions. The guys in California help fund some of those expeditions, and they spend a lot of money to put these things on. So
yeah,
some of the people and some of the things that they've done, they've got videos on them, and it's a bunch of crazy people.
Well, one of the things that comes to mind though is that when you try to co-locate a sensitive receiver anywhere near a transmitter, say a quarter mile, I think you are asking too much for normal human-made hardware, especially a device that is inhaling the entire spectrum, like an 888, which is already a compromise to inhale all of HF. It's a hell of a compromise. We have to jump through hoops, and we could tell you, talk for hours about it. I think what the better approach would be, are the expeditions and operators transmitting something that could be tracked by multiple stations around the world? I mean, if they're running FT8 or something like that, then the answer is yes, and getting that information back to them that indicates the propagation and also correlates it with known vocap predictions to see how they mesh would be extremely interesting, and I don't know that that's being done yet. I mean, we refined vocap, but getting something to work at our transmitter site while transmissions are occurring, I think is going to involve a lot of hardware that we haven't discussed, mainly to actively notch out local transmitters. And you cross your fingers that they're not running 7300s. You're crossing your fingers that everybody's running flexes that won't produce trash everywhere or running lots of filters.
So reverse beacon network already does some of what you're talking about, and you don't have to be running FT8. Anybody that sends CQ and CW gets logged by the reverse beacon network.
Right. I run a CW skimmer, and I know how amazingly terrible it is.
Yeah.
It is incredibly awful. The fact that there are bazillions of data points out there, but means that, you're likely to, if you play lottery long enough, you'll likely win, and that's kind of how it works. But the raw data coming out of CW skimmer is amazingly bad. So what would be the data that would be looked for at at a remote receiver site, of which there are plenty that are not co-located with a DX transmitter, that could augment predictions and reports that are already there? I mean,
So you're saying that now a de-expedition that goes out, say in the middle of the Indian Ocean or wherever they go, and they start transmitting on a bunch of different bands, if they look for their own call on PSK Reporter, they're not going to get any useful information out of that? I mean, not PSK Report, I'm sorry, the Reverse Beacon Network,
Well, no, well, they
particularly if they're
will.
operating CW, right?
Well, they will, but do they get, well, the reverse beacon probably doesn't give the granularity that we'd like to see.
The
I mean,
thing is, the guys that go out and operate like you're talking about, they don't care about who can hear them because they're so swamped with people trying to touch them. It's the people like yourself, maybe that wants to work those people that's watching for the opening and the opportunity.
You know, I think the questions I would ask if I were a contester is where's the QSO rate going to be fastest right now? What band do I get on? You know, what can I operate? You know, where can I talk? The next thing is, when is the band going to open to some place that I don't really have any multipliers yet? You know, so can you look at 20 megahertz to predict when 21 megahertz is going to start to open? Or can you look at some place that's 1,000 miles closer to Europe than you are and see when it opens so you could predict maybe when it's going to open for you? If you're a de-expedition, you might ask the questions, you know, does our antenna have a problem going some particular direction? Or do we have schedules with people we need to talk to? And when do we think that might happen? So there's a lot of different ways that folks might use the information, many of which are not, you know, not compatible with each other, or they're not aligned with each other. And so to me, the problem is kind of twofold. One is, what kind of information can you gather? And then what are the different ways it can be analyzed? You've got run stations who want to analyze it one way. You've got DXers who want to analyze it a different way. You got de-expeditions probably have a third way they want to analyze it. And so the second problem is post-processing what you've captured in the first phase. And that's where you know, talking to the PVRC guys is probably good in terms of what questions are they trying to answer so that they can maximize their scores, for example.
Yeah. Now, if we touch back to another thing, Clint, I really do appreciate what you're saying about trying to co-locate these things with major transmitters. And I I I guess I have a couple. One is a comment. I think that I think one of my goals or our goals would be to have fairly widespread adoption of these personal space weather stations. And the reason from a scientific point of view, like from putting my scientist hat on for a second, you know, we want to have data points from as many places as possible. And so I want to get these things out to as many ham radio operators as possible so we can have lots of data and good sampling. If I put my ham radio operator hat on for a minute, and I have to ask myself, well, why are these ham radio operators going to put one of these things in their house and have it run all day long and make sure that it's actually operational? And you know, a lot of people will join like the grape project and they will put their grape out and they collected it for the eclipse, and now that the eclipse is done, they're like, okay, the project's over. And that's not really what we want. And I don't think people are going to be super interested in just putting up an antenna that, you know, has a box connected to it and then sends data off to some scientist to go look at. You know, that'll be good for like 6 months or a year maybe, but then most people will probably get bored of it. So if we did have some sort of a system that the average ham radio operator would actually find useful running at their own station, where they said, okay, I actually see a benefit to me by putting this thing in my backyard, um, that would be really nice. And I think that's a big motivation for trying to figure out a way to co-locate it with transmitters or
Well,
yeah.
okay. The first problem, of course, is to get them to dedicate an antenna for it.
Right.
But the other thing is that if it's around a bunch of other transmitters, the best thing to do is to be a transmitter. To essentially put a whisper transmitter together that's multi-band. And
Yeah.
then you can go to the WhisperNet and see where you're heard.
Mm-hmm.
And that provides the information that you're looking for. You don't have to fight, with using a receiver in amongst a bunch of high power transmitters.
Now, one thing here's one possible solution to it. I think you can probably say that the propagation, if you choose any location, all the propagation within, say, like a mile to 5 miles radius is going to be essentially the same if the land is relatively flat and the terrain is similar. My guess is that most of these contesters would even if they have their main transmitters located at one particular place, they probably have a buddy within 5 miles that has a relatively quiet location that could host a receiver that could aid in their contest. So one potential workaround for this personal space weather station is to say not locate it right on the contest, the contester's transmitter property, but tell them, okay, what you want to do is you want to stick this at a friend's house 3 miles away where it's not going to get overloaded by your transmitters.
Yeah.
And then the problem that you have to deal with is you have to deal with contest rules that might say things like you have to have all of your receivers within a 500-meter circle. But and that would be true if you're using it as as an auxiliary receiver. But if you're using it as a spotting device, generally there's not much difference between that and assisted spotting,
Well, even a contest or DX station is not transmitting 24/7. I mean, 100% of the time. I mean, there are going to be pauses, and you can listen for things during those pauses.
And that's true too.
I don't know. Try a station like K3LR. They're going to be running frequencies more than they're going to be listening, and that means that they're going to be transmitting at least almost 50% of the time.
Are there things we could do? I mean, first of all, I think it's beneficial to try sticking one of these stations over at Tim Duffy's place just to see how it performs.
Sure.
And I mean, he's willing to host it. He's willing to pay for it. He's a really sharp engineer, and he's a crackerjack operator, and he runs skimmers, I think, too. So I mean, I think by putting that there, we'll get some real, maybe it really will be awful, and we won't get anything useful from it.
Here's an idea. Here's something that all the analog RF guys could do to make themselves still useful. Let's make an automatic roving notch filter. It just finds strong signals on HF and notches them out.
That's an interesting thought.
Well, I know how to do that, but it's not the sort of thing that you would have a Paul make and sell a lot of. I mean,
well, unless you can find a clever way to do it cheap.
Well, yeah,
right?
I mean,
perhaps.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could make, with enough effort, you could make anything work. Well, I think breaking it down into two pieces. First of all, for the Nathaniel pointed out people losing interest. I think that illustrates the need for some eye candy, if for a lack of a better word, on showing what your efforts are and how you're contributing to them. And one of the things that I've also wondered about was that we have a Whisper and more systems now, with HFDL and everything else. What are we doing to validate and reinforce and quantify predictions? Like vocap is an obvious one. I mean, are things running side by side and showing you should be seeing signals here this well, and are you or are you not?
Yeah, I can tell you that some of that, I have other scientists that are either applying for grants or working on papers right now that are trying to answer those questions with the data.
It would seem though, right now, we have a machine that could do that.
Right.
I mean, it could grab whatever the predictions are from from NIST or whoever the hell has them, and then and it's a computer.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
But I'm saying that there are people right now who are working on those problems.
Right,
With
right.
Using machine learning, Nathaniel, sounds like a good application for it.
the ones I know right now are not using machine learning at this moment, but I mean that could be something that gets applied in the future.
Right. But yeah, I mean, that would be interesting to see if nothing
Yeah.
else. I mean,
But like right now I know Kuldeep Pandey, who's the postdoc over at NJIT working with Gareth Perry and with me. Like he's going through all of the solar eclipse data right now, and he has beautiful figures looking at that, and he's starting to do ray tracing through the SAME 3 physics-based ionospheric model, and he's doing those comparisons now with the eclipse data. And I have I have another person, Kukai Hazumi. She's also she's at the International Space Weather Action Team down in Cape Canaveral, Florida, with Bill Engelke right now, and they're there talking to the NASA scientists and other international scientists about how to use this data for validation. So there are like there's actually active efforts going on right now to say how do we use this data for that sort of thing. I'm not saying we can't do more. I'm just saying that there are people who are doing it. So, anyway, I think I think yeah.
So looking at the whisper spots map right now around my QTH,
Yeah.
there are two stations, one across the town from me and one northwest of me, that are operating as receivers, one on 40 and one on 80. And of course, they're picking up spots. I would certainly feel good about using those spots to determine where I thought that I could get to, because they're within a few miles of me. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so this idea that you could put that you could have a receiver that's away from the station, yeah, maybe so. I just think that for a de-expedition, that probably wouldn't be all that easy to do, really.
Yeah.
Because they have one spot on the beach and they got everything all set up there. And,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think we're gonna get all of this answered tonight, but I wanted to start this discussion, and I still do think it's a useful task for Owen to start by just building a Whisper Daemon system, getting to know what tools are out there, and I really do think there is a use to be able to visualize locally the spots that the thing is collecting, and I think if you were able to implement that, that would be a really good start to help him to get to know the system, and it could lead to further discussion as to where we go next. Do we want to, really make it a local device? Do we want to use all the remote data, stuff like that?
Well, I'm happy to help him. Set up and install a B-Link and a 888. And give him a little tour. I probably, if he wants to look inside the software, I'm probably the best person to do so. And Owen, if you have my email address, we could set up a conference call or something and do this offline.
I'll probably definitely take you up on that.
Okay.
Once I get the hand on the hardware and have time to go home.
So yeah, get the. I mean, I don't. You can do it there in the Ham Club. It looks like you're in the USR control room there. But
Yeah, I am. I'm up there here right now. Easier
okay,
than
well,
doing it in my dorm.
okay, well, if you want to set up a time, I'm in California, so I'm 3 hours earlier than you. So just take that into account. I'm an early riser here, so by 10 a.m. your time, I'm kind of available. But then I have breakfast, and this. So that there, you'll see as you get involved in this project that there people are involved around the world. So there's time zone issues just in terms of development, and interactions.
There's no problem if you don't sleep.
Yeah.
I tell you, yes, that's true. Rob knows that.
Yes. I know you don't sleep,
Yeah.
Phil.
Yeah. Hey guys, always grab the screen for a second here. I mean, you don't have to get very fancy for this stuff to be useful. I mean, this is what my station's heard in the last hour on that's been reported to PSK report. I mean, you can just tell by inspection, where the bands are open right now.
Yeah.
You don't have to get fancy. I mean, it's pretty obvious, if I want to talk to Japan right now, what bands do I use, of course, most hams done 80 HF work would probably already know that intuitively, but it doesn't take very much.
Well, I think this is where it'd be really interesting to hear what the contesters, like the ones who are really winning, would say. Like if they look at this, if they say, "Well, this is great, but can you have it add this particular number or statistic on the screen or
Yeah,
something?"
well, yeah,
You know,
start by
so
showing them this because they probably
it
don't know that even this is possible now.
right. Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, just start with this sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm down to 54 countries in the last 24 hours. Usually it's over 100. Has the bad's been bad lately?
Um,
I don't think I killed anything. Yeah.
it
Any
looks like if you go to the statistics page in the lower left-hand corner,
statistics.
yeah, click on that. Look at the number of spots received reports per hour.
Is that from me?
No, that's from everybody.
From everybody. Okay.
Yeah, so you look at this instead of per hour, there's less.
Yeah.
You're down
Oh, it's
by.
fallen off in the last day. I see.
Yes, yes, the last 24 hours has fallen off.
Okay.
There's
Now
a kind
there's
of a high K index right now. It's running about 4.
That could be the reason.
yeah, so you can see, you know, that doesn't mean those numbers. I think don't tell you how many people are trying to transmit, for example, right? You don't know how many people are trying to receive. You only know the number of people who actually
Well, it says
have
active
received and reported.
monitors, active transmitters. Well, I mean, all it takes is one, right, to get on the active list.
Yeah, I suppose so. I don't know. Phil's there actually one of the areas that we have this that database is very Philip doesn't really provide very good query tools um, into the PSK reporter. You have a very limited set of queries you can make based upon the things across the top of that screen. Uh, it's just much, much less sophisticated querying than is available from, well, WhisperNet isn't particularly good, but Phil's site, Philip Barnard, VK7 Whisper.rocks, you can do incredible queries on there. You can say, back in 1917, 2017, what signals went from Australia to Europe from, April through June. You can make that query um, uh, on the Whisper database. You can't make that query on PSK Reporter that I
Yeah,
know.
I mean, he's got a SQL tab, so you can just sit there and make up your own SQL queries.
Well,
Yeah.
I suppose so. It's also a very slow database. I mean, he's got
Yeah.
I think he's using MySQL. So a lot of queries that you might be interested in doing can take so long that you just don't even bother with it. Whereas the database we're using and that the Whisper Rocks uses a ClickHouse database that I host, but have almost nothing to do with other than hosting it. But it's anywhere from 100 to 1,000 times faster. I mean, it's incredibly fast. So that you can make queries and make conjectures and test them out in real time through VK7JJ that are impractical through the use of Postgres and the the Postgres tools. MySQL, all those things are now they have those are general purpose databases, um, whereas the ClickHouse database that Phil uses, Whisper Rocks uses, is a time series optimized database. So it's tuned for what we want to do, and the tuning results in dramatic increases in performance. So if that's if that's an impediment to doing research and making conjectures and validating or invalidating them, then then there's a value to other databases, and than the ones that are out there, the PSK Reporter one. We've actually cloned, I didn't do it, or hosting it. We've cloned the PSK Reporter database and have it running at a site in Utah. And I really don't know anything about it, but if you wanted to do full-blown queries with the kind of lightning speed of the PSK Reporter data, then we're hosting one. Just as we do the same thing for WhisperNet. I mean, the WhisperNet was getting overwhelmed. I mean, they weren't able to keep up with the queries 2 or 3 years ago. And so so we've cloned their data, and that's what Whisper Rocks uses, and several other sites use our clone of the WhisperNet data. So that's never been done. Nobody's done a front end in front of a clone of PSK Reporter where it makes it easy for you to do queries. Now, I may not be relevant to the Frankfurt Radio Club project, so I don't want to go too far into it. But there's all kinds of projects one could envision that one could invest time in. But we should start, Owen, just by getting you set up, and you probably don't even know what Whisper is, and if you've just gotten to ham radio, we're talking a fair number of acronyms that are probably meaningless to you. Um, so
Owen's pretty quick on the
I
uptake
think
with acronyms.
So how many here are
Okay.
familiar with the digital geochron?
I'm familiar. I'm familiar with the analog geochron too.
Yeah, well, the digital geochron with a ham radio bundle essentially lets you map Whisper, PSK, FT8, all kinds of stuff on the map, and it's updated in real time, and it's actually quite useful. And K3LR has one in his station, I know.
Yeah, I mean that might be a good thing to look at too.
But I'm just saying, I'm just looking at mine right now here, and it says that on 20, 17, and 15 meters, there is a big opening to Japan right now from North America.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that's not over. I think we may have overwhelmed Oren with all of this stuff, and let's make it. I want to go back and make sure it's something not too daunting to him. And it sounds like you've got hardware sitting that you'd like to plug together and understand. And maybe let's just schedule a time. I don't know what your schedule looks like. Since I'm a retired person, I have more flexibility in theory. So.
And 30 meters and 40 meters is open across the Atlantic to Europe right now. So I just see that just by looking at the map up here, so.
From where you are, maybe. I don't see Europe nearly as well as I used to when I was on the East Coast.
No, yeah, this is from East Coast, yeah.
And I don't think I've ever seen
Midwest.
I don't think I've ever seen anybody in India. It's a black hole from here.
I don't think I've ever had a contact with somebody in India myself. It's almost exactly antipodal for me.
Yeah. I have another topic bring up when people were.
And I just sent Majid an email, so you can ask him to give you your toys tomorrow.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right. Well, I gotta go.
Here's another topic for people who might be interested in talking about synchronized inputs. Well, I have it now. This is the block diagram of the Phobos SDR. Somebody contributed a driver for this recently, so I just went and bought one, tried it out, and it works. It needed a little bit of cleanup, but it seems to work fine. As you can see, it's primarily meant to be VHF and UHF, but it does have this direct sample mode where you can bypass all the tuners on the front end and just feed the A to Ds directly through 25 megahertz low pass filters, because the sampling rate is 50 megahertz. So it won't do 12 and 10 meters, but it does everything below that. there's no adjustable gain, no AGC. There's a fixed gain of 20 dB on the HF inputs, but it seems to work pretty well. But the interesting thing is that I can very easily, with a few mathematical tricks, feed separate antennas into this thing and have them go through as if they're IQ signals and then separate them out at the baseband. So you can have two synchronized channels, one on I, one on Q, that are actually the two separate antennas. And I'm trying to figure out what that might be useful for. People have been wanting this, so now I guess we
Blocking
got.
dynamic range is not very um, impressive.
Well, no, maybe not, but I seem to hear fine, at least in the lower HF bands at night, which is what I'm usually up.
Yeah.
A question on the RX 888. What I've seen videos and things on it, that SDR. What's your opinion on the RF performance of that particular radio?
That'll take about an hour to discuss.
Oh, okay. I was just curious.
I think I've been running a 4 receivers at KFS for the last 9 months. A Kiwi, they're fed the same RF. Now this is conditioned RF, and I think people do not appreciate this. I think you can't a wideband SDR. You just can't connect an antenna up to a wideband SDR. Yeah, one that just doesn't, it captures the whole band. You cannot feed it the whole spectrum and expect it to perform very well. It's just that's unreasonable. I mean, with a 16-bit DAC, you just don't have the dynamic range you need to have the AM signals, your local AM broadcaster come in. But given you condition it, cut out the AM band. Other things that I won't go into.
Put front-end filtering on
okay,
it.
yeah. Given that you do all that's in ways that are appropriate for the devices, the performance of all of them RF performance is virtually identical. That is the RX 888, the Kiwi SDR. Those are the two direct samples. Now I guess the photos looks like it's another one. There's the SDR Play, RP1A, and the AirSpy. HF. Okay, I've had 4 of those running, given the same RF off of passive splitter. They produce the same number of spots with the same SNRs over a 6-month period. There's just no difference. There's no difference on 20 meters. If you go to 10 meters, you can see a little advantage to the 888 and the Kiwi and the AirSpy is maybe a dB better up there at 10 meters because it has a slightly lower noise. I probably, if I were to work on it, we could fix that up for the 888 and the Kiwis, fix them up to match the AirSpy. But basically, there's really no difference if you know what you're doing and you're willing to apply some time and a modest amount of external devices. So you should really not. You should, the choice of the receiver should be based upon its functional, not it's somehow that one of them is more sensitive than the other. That's just not important. If I were to say one is worse than the other, it's the SDR Play. It's a couple dBs less
and
sensitive.
there are other reasons to avoid it too.
And and it has other reasons. But other than that, what do you want to do? And the 888 has its own problems. I mean, nothing is ever pure. We would really like to have our own design, and I guess we're working so have a goal of doing that, right? 888 architecture, but well implemented.
Well, I mean, it'd be interesting to know why you're having trouble with the SDR Play, because I use them in northern Utah, but with my own driver and AGC. So I think something else is going on that we haven't identified.
It's a very small. Maybe if I did a little more work, I fiddled with the gain settings, and you know, it has a kind of obscure way of setting its gain. And
Yeah, the documentation is infuriating, but I would like to call your attention, the person who's asking the question. I just put in the chat an link to a blog page that explains the conditioning that Rob waved away. A huge topic that is underappreciated by almost everybody that uses a Red Pitaya or a Kiwi or Web 888 or anything. It is shocking to me that this is not taken into account by the manufacturers or proponents of these. It is not the be all and end all of these, but it is at least something at minimum you have to do to make these things hope to work well over the HF spectrum all at once, you know, simultaneously. I mean,
you know, and you know, we did long ago in this project go and compare the performance of these, and at that time we used the Kiwi. And compared it against the Flex and, you know, these high-end, you know, transceiver receivers things. It's the same, you know, they don't do any better. It's, you know, there's again, you know, if you look at something like a Flex, okay, it has some front end filtering that you don't have in others. So there's conditions in which operation conditions where one of those might do a little better. And, you know, if you have a nearby 40-meter transmitter and you're operating on 20, your Flex might be better at rejecting that 40 meter than your wideband SDR. But they're very, I think I think that this is a deep and complex subject, but the summary is, they all work well. And they can all be made to work well for not much, you know, but it requires understanding and an investment of time. And Clint has many blog pages that are a wealth of information on how to do this properly.
I would also remind you that the perfect is the enemy of the good enough.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, they could make it better, but you aren't going to gain much more than a tiny fraction.
Yeah, to that end, your first step is putting on an AC, an FM, an AM broadcast band stop filter, and that'll take care of 95% of your problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very effective. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they're easy to get. I mean, they're all over, you know, they're available from New Elect and a bunch of others that sell these RTL SDR dongles. The ones that really need help on dynamic range.
I'm going to head to bed now, so thank you very much.
Oh, that's right. You're on the East Coast, aren't you?
Yeah, it's almost 11 o'clock here, so thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night. Thank you for coming, Owen.
I'm gonna do the same thing. Nice talking to everybody.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Okay, Owen. I'll look forward to hearing from you.
73. I'll stop
Rob,
the recording, but I'll leave the discussion on.
Rob, did you tell Clint about